In March of the year 415, a woman rode through the streets of Alexandria. Her name was Hypatia. She was a philosopher, a teacher of astronomy and mathematics, the daughter of Theon, and one of the most respected intellectual figures in the city. Then a crowd stopped her carriage. According to the historian Socrates Scholasticus, she was dragged away, taken to the Caesareum, and killed. Her body was destroyed, and her remains were burned. The facts are already brutal enough. They do not need to be decorated. But the question remains, why would a philosophical teacher be murdered by a mob in the street? The easy answer is that religion killed science. The dramatic answer is that an ancient goddess of mathematics was torn apart because her knowledge was too dangerous. Both answers are too simple. Hypatia was not killed because she proved a theorem. She was not killed because of a laboratory experiment. And she was not simply the final victim in a clean story of ancient reason, defeated by faith. The real story is more political, more urban, and more frightening. Hypatia became dangerous because she had public authority in a city where authority was being fought over. She crossed factional lines. She had access to power. And rumor turned her into the person standing between two men who could not reconcile. To answer why she died, we should not begin with blood. We should begin with who she was. Hypatia was not a mythic goddess. That phrase belongs to later imagination, not careful history. The historical Hypatia was something more human and, in many ways, more remarkable. A woman who held public intellectual authority in late antique Alexandria. She was the daughter of Theon, a mathematician and astronomer associated with the scholarly traditions of the city. She was educated in philosophy, mathematics, and astronomy. She taught within the Platonist tradition, and her reputation reached beyond Alexandria. Her own writings are mostly lost. Modern sources associate her with work on mathematical and astronomical commentaries, including traditions around Diophantus, Apollonius, and Ptolemy. But the evidence for original mathematical research is limited. That does not make her less important. In late antiquity, preserving, editing, teaching, and transmitting mathematical knowledge were not minor tasks. They were how intellectual worlds survived. Hypatia was also not simply a pagan teacher surrounded only by pagans. Among those connected to her was Synesius, who later became a Christian bishop. His letters show respect for her as a teacher and intellectual guide. This matters because it breaks the cartoon version of the story. The city was not divided into science on one side and religion on the other. Hypatia's authority crossed boundaries. She could be respected by students with different religious identities. She could move in elite circles. She could advise, teach, and be consulted. In a stable society, that kind of authority can be a gift. In a factional city, it can become a threat. Hypatia was more than a teacher. She was a public voice, and that made her useful to rumor. Alexandria was not a quiet museum of ancient learning. It was a city of crowds, factions, religious tension, ethnic conflict, civic administration, and street power. By Hypatia's lifetime, the old pagan world had lost political dominance. Christianity had become a central public force, and the institutions of the Roman state still mattered. Authority did not sit in one place. It was contested. In 412, Cyril became bishop of Alexandria. Orestes was the Roman prefect of Egypt. These two offices represented different centers of power: ecclesiastical authority and imperial civic authority. Their relationship deteriorated. Socrates Scholasticus describes a city already strained by conflict. There were disputes involving Christians and Jews. There were monks who intervened violently in public affairs. There was an atmosphere in which crowds could become political instruments. In such a city, power did not only move through law. It moved through pulpits, offices, streets, rumors, and groups capable of physical force. That is the hidden system of Hypatia's death. If we imagine her only as a scholar in a room, the murder seems impossible. But if we place her in Alexandria's public world, the mechanism becomes visible. A bishop wants influence. A prefect resists. A city watches. Crowds choose sides. Rumor explains what politics cannot. And an intellectual close to one center of power can suddenly become a symbol in someone else's story. Soon, the city's two centers of power collided. The conflict between Cyril and Orestes is the key to the murder. Orestes was the prefect, the representative of Roman civic authority. Cyril was the bishop, leader of an increasingly powerful church presence in Alexandria. Their struggle was not an abstract theological disagreement. It was a fight over who could command the city. Hypatia became entangled because she was close to Orestes. Socrates says she met with him frequently. Because of this, some people came to believe that she was the reason Orestes would not be reconciled with Cyril. This is the dangerous moment. Not a proof, not a book, not an astronomical instrument. A rumor. The rumor did not need to show that Hypatia had done anything specific. It only needed to make her legible as an obstacle. If Orestes resists Cyril, why? Because someone is advising him. If reconciliation fails, who is blocking it? The woman he trusts. Rumor converts complexity into a target. It takes a political struggle between powerful men and gives the crowd a person to blame. This is one reason her gender mattered. A woman with public authority, philosophical prestige, and access to a male political figure could be reimagined as manipulative, unnatural, or dangerous. This is also why her pagan philosophical identity mattered. In a Christianizing city, a respected non-Christian intellectual close to the prefect could be turned into a symbol of the wrong kind of influence. The question is not whether Hypatia actually controlled Orestes. The question is why people needed to believe she did. When a society needs a scapegoat, facts are often too slow. Then the rumor became violence. Socrates' Scholasticus gives the most important, near-contemporary account. He says that a group led by Peter the Reader seized Hypatia, dragged her from her carriage, took her to the Caesareum, and murdered her. The Caesareum itself carried layers of meaning. It had once belonged to imperial and civic space, and later became a church. In the story of Hypatia's death, it becomes a terrible symbol. The public world, the religious world, and the machinery of mob violence collapsed into one place. We should be careful with the details. Ancient sources describe the killing harshly, but a documentary does not need to linger over mutilation. The fact of the murder is enough. What matters is the system that made it possible. Was this religious fanaticism? Yes, religious identity was part of it. Was it political violence? Yes, the conflict between Cyril and Orestes was central. Was it gendered suspicion? Yes, her authority as a woman made the rumor sharper. Was it an attack on philosophy and learning? Yes, because the victim was a public intellectual whose authority had crossed factional lines. The most honest answer is that all of these forces met in the street. We do not have secure evidence that Cyril directly ordered the murder. Socrates does not say that. Later sources and modern interpretations are more accusatory in different ways, but the direct command cannot be treated as established fact. Still, Socrates says the act brought reproach on Cyril and the Alexandrian church. That is important. Responsibility in history is not always limited to a written order. There is also the responsibility of a factional environment, the responsibility of rumor, the responsibility of crowds taught whom to hate. After her death, the question did not end. The harder question became how history would explain the violence. Hypatia did not remain only a historical person. She became a symbol. For some later writers, she became a martyr of science against religion. For others, a martyr of pagan philosophy. For others, a symbol of female intellect destroyed by male power. For others, the last light of the classical world going out. Each of these images captures something. Each can also hide something. If we turn Hypatia only into science killed by religion, we erase the political mechanics. Cyril and Orestes, prefect and bishop, rumor and crowd. If we turn her into a literal goddess of mathematics, we erase the real teacher, editor, philosopher, and public intellectual whose work existed inside fragile historical evidence. If we make her death the same story as the destruction of the Library of Alexandria, we merge separate histories into one convenient myth. The truth is less clean and more useful. Hypatia was killed because a factional city made her into a scapegoat. Her learning mattered, but not because one theorem threatened the mob. Her learning mattered because it gave her authority. Her authority mattered because it crossed boundaries. And boundaries are exactly what factional politics tries to harden. If we turn her only into myth, we miss the most dangerous part: how rumor kills. Hypatia's death was a human tragedy, but it was also a civic failure. A society that murders a teacher has already lost more than one life. It has lost the ability to tolerate authority that does not belong neatly to one faction. Hypatia stood at a dangerous crossing point. She was a woman with public authority in a male-dominated world. She was a pagan philosopher, respected by Christian students. She was a teacher of mathematics and astronomy in a city of religious conflict. She was close to Orestes, while Orestes and Cyril struggled over civic power. That combination made her visible. Visibility made her useful. Usefulness made her vulnerable. The mob did not need to understand her philosophy. It did not need to refute her mathematics. It only needed to believe the rumor that she was the obstacle. That is why the story still matters. Modern societies also manufacture scapegoats. They still turn public figures into symbols. They still replace complicated conflicts with one person to hate. And they still discover, too late, that when rumor destroys a person, it also destroys the space where reason could have spoken. Hypatia was not killed because a formula was too dangerous. She was killed because a city mistook a rational voice for an enemy. What was torn apart was not only a body, it was public reason itself.